Alright, so welcome, right? Good morning, everyone. So today, right? So today's tutorial, this is our first tutorial. So it's actually just an extension, okay, a very important extension to what we covered yesterday, all right? Yesterday's lecture. Okay, so the first section I will be talking about is basic neuroanatomy. I didn't really talk too much about it, right, in the first lecture. So for today's, tutorial, I'll just start with a mini lecture. Right? I really think that this is important. For the sake of writing your paper, if you're writing about the brain especially, okay, and I do know that some of you may want to do advanced studies, okay, after this. So if you happen to be in a lab with a lot of brain researchers like myself, okay, don't get all these terminologies wrong, okay. So just to start, okay, so corpus callosum, right, anterior commissure, okay. I'll be talking a little bit in detail about these two substructures, okay. But first thing first, okay. So the first thing that we talk about the brain, right, is of course the two hemispheres, okay. That's what we see on the left panel, right? So basically this one everybody knows, okay, where is the left hemisphere, where is the right hemisphere, okay, and then our interhemispheric fissure, okay. Usually we have a lot of cerebral spinal fluid, filling up, that space. It's like our arachnoid space, okay, the same kind of concept. And so horizontal view, okay, horizontal is not a word that is used frequently. Usually we call it transverse, okay, transverse or axile, A-X-I-A-L, right? So in the next couple of slides we'll see that. And then the middle panel, basically we see a sagittal view of the brain, okay? So that one we know also something, if we are kind of splitting our brain apart, okay? And then we're looking at from the side, from the lateral view, okay? That's the sagittal view, okay? So in that case, it's also called the lateral view, okay? The view from the side, okay? And what on earth is this anterior commissure and this, posterior commissure, all right, okay? Why is it so important, right? So these two, they're very, very close. The anterior commissure is very, very close to our olfactory bulb, which gives us our sense of smell, okay? And then it's also very, very close to our amygdala. So just take it as a subcortical region. So it's a coordinate region, okay, that has a lot of white matter fibers, but not as much as our corpus callosum. Corpus callosum has the most, the heaviest density of white matter connections, right? And then followed by our anterior commissure that stretches all the way, right, to our posterior commissure, right? Posterior commissure as well. It's white matter connections between the two hemispheres, okay? And so above, right, what is covering our corpus callosum, right, our white matter, tracts, okay, is this thing, what we call the cingulate, okay? So when you actually look at an MRI image, okay, usually this will be the, all the gray areas on top, the neocortex, and then this one will be less gray, okay? It's very, very prominent, and then followed by our white matter tracts, right, and then all this thing is white. So these three regions are very, very easy to spot, right? I would say that, our corpus callosum is the easiest to spot because everything is white, okay? A lot of fatty tissues, of course, and then followed by our cingulate, right, yeah. So once upon a time when I was taking my biopsych, experimental class, okay, in NUS, I was with all my lab mates, my teammates, and then, we were talking to each other. And then one of them was asking, oh, what is this thing? What is this, which is, that is the cingulate, okay, that is cingulate, the thing on top of the corpus callosum, right? So the corpus callosum, right, is so interesting, okay? Okay, number one, I think if you read everything, you read your textbook, read Wikipedia, it's just, the biggest, white matter tract, that joins both hemispheres, okay? But at the same time, if you read about literature concerning like split brain patients, okay, which I talked about yesterday's tutorial, so that was done, a lot of such work has been done by Michael Gazzaniga. I think he's kind of retired formerly from, I think he worked at UCSB, okay, UCSB Santa Barbara. So yeah, he did a lot of, he's more than 70 right now, a very, very famous psychologist. More like a neuropsychologist. So he did a lot of work on a single patient, okay, almost like HM. But that person has his corpus callosum severe. So he reported this split brain phenomenon. So basically, that person, right, is almost having like two kinds of personalities, two kinds of consciousness. So that was really surprising. And so what is actually happening? So basically, his point of view is that we need all this. We need an intact corpus callosum, okay, so that we get one intact consciousness. So that, it's like our two hemispheres are kind of not really coordinated with each other. So we need this fiber to kind of, bring us into awareness, to have one sense of self. Yeah. So that's his body of work, right? Highly interesting. But at the same time, there was a lot of controversial findings. Right? Go and look him up. Okay, Gazzaniga. Okay, and it's very interesting. Split brain research. Right, and you guys will find a lot of stuff. Right. Okay. So next, okay, we talk about the four main lobes. Okay, this is pretty basic knowledge, right? Almost everybody know this. We've been through introduction psychology, right? So this is just a refresher for most of us here. Okay, so the frontal lobe, okay, is pretty much the most prominent, right? So and it's covering our anterior commissure that we talk about. Okay, that's a subcortical region. Okay. And then I just want to, before I actually talk about the four lobes, I just really want to talk about the division, the points of division, right? So this point, the vertical point of division is what we call the central sulcus, okay? And that is actually where we actually have our somatosensory cortex, right? Which is actually just right proximal to it, okay? Anterior to it, that's like our supplementary somatosensory cortex, okay? And then posterior to it is like our what we call supplementary motor area, SMA. Sorry, it's this association motor cortex. Yeah, yeah. So if I recall this correctly, right? So supplementary motor area is somewhere here, right? Yeah. Posterior is, it's anterior to the central sulcus. Okay, and then frontal lobe. Okay, there's a lot of regions. I'm not going to go through all these different regions, but what you guys have to know, right, is that it is highly important for executive functioning. Okay, working memory, long-term memory. Even visual processing, okay. And primary visual processing is carried out by the parietal lobe, but secondary upper, advanced level, we need the frontal lobe, okay. And then what we have is emotion regulation, okay. Yeah. Okay, so parietal lobe next, okay. Posterior to it, okay. So involving what we call somatosensation, okay. So basically like feeling all the inputs when we touch a hot object, with our fingers, we're feeling something, okay. Association cortex, okay, that is when it's sending out and receiving a lot of axonic signals, right, to the other lobes. That's what we call it, as the so-called association cortex. And advanced visual processing, okay, that's maybe like secondary upper levels of visual processing. So it's not just basic lines, basic shapes, but we want to look at the texture, okay, right? So that's involving parietal lobe function, right? Also like spatial orientation, right? Parietal lobe is highly involved, right? And so temporal lobe, okay. When we get to the learning and memory lectures and tutorials, okay, we will be focusing on this region a lot, okay. Especially the medial temporal lobe, okay, MTL, not the middle, okay. What we're seeing here is this is the middle, the lateral temporal lobe, okay. Okay, I will point out the distinction between what is middle and medial later. Okay, that took me a long time to learn, by the way. All right, so occipital lobe, everybody know. Okay, that's involved for visual processing. Okay, that's the conventional wisdom. Okay, conventional wisdom. Do take note. But for people with blindness, as I mentioned yesterday, okay, for people with blindness, okay, this region can be rewired. Okay, because of neuroplasticity, can be rewired for processing auditory stimuli. Okay, take that into consideration. Okay, a lot of research on that. Yeah. Okay, cerebral cortex, okay, so as I mentioned yesterday, so cerebral cortex, what we mean by cortex, okay, cortex is, it means bark, okay, it means bark in Latin, okay. So we are actually looking at a lot of Latin words, Latinized English words, in neuroscience, in medicine, of course, yeah. Of course, and posterior frontal lobe, okay, as I mentioned just now, okay, posterior frontal lobe is the region, that is anterior to the central sulcus. Okay, that part of our brain is involved in our motoric functions. Okay, how we move our hands, how we coordinate our fingers, our legs. Right. Without it, right, we wouldn't be able to walk. We wouldn't be able to travel. Okay, ventral frontal lobe olfaction. Okay, we will be seeing the olfactory bulb right in the next few slides. Anterior parietal lobe and is involved in somatosensation, okay, all right, somatosensory, yeah. And superior temporal lobe auditory system, okay, I'll go back, okay. So where is this superior temporal lobe, STL, right? It is right, okay, ventral, right, it's inferior to the Sylvian fissure, okay, the lateral sulcus. So this is this region here, okay. It's also called the Herschel's gyrus, for some of you, if you're interested. Let me just, okay, so it's spelled as HERSCHL, okay. HERSCHL, Herschel's gyrus, right? Named after a famous German researcher, of course. Yeah. And gustation. Okay, so Yeah, so this is what we call the TPJ, right? Temporal parietal junction. Okay, as we can see, somewhere here, right? Somewhere here. Okay, it is so. Sylvian fissure, you have to go up a little bit until it reaches the point of contact with the parietal lobe. Okay, and so on this slide that we're looking at, cerebral cortex, this slide that we're looking at, so basically it's right beneath S1 and S2. Okay, so this is the junction here, right? TPJ. Again, it's not so prominent. It's actually quite hard to spot. Okay, so this is actually just gives you a very simple schematic of all this thing, right? But in reality, TPJ is much harder to spot. You need higher resolution images. Okay, just do take that in mind. Okay, then occipital lobe, as I said, okay, visual processing. Right, this slide here is just showing you the basic, visual processing. The primary occipital lobe, right? So that's this part we call it BA17. Okay, then this part we call it BA, anterior to it we call it BA18, BA19. Okay, that's really in charge of processing more complicated information, usually spatial in nature. Okay, that's my area of research, right? Okay, you want to find direction. Okay, those areas are involved, right? Okay, so all this, all knowledge, right? All these things, information I gave everybody. Okay, is for the sake of augmenting, giving you a basic foundational idea. Okay, they're not hyperly crucial. Okay, for the midterm, for the end of trimester exam. Okay, but this part, okay, the forebrain. Okay. When we talk about the Diencephalon, okay, Telencephalon, okay, I need everybody to focus a bit, okay. So the mouse is a bit sensitive, okay. Pardon me for that. So Diencephalon, okay, remember it's involves the subcortical region, okay. Telencephalon is a bit higher, right? So that's like the bark region, the neocortical region of the forebrain. So thalamus, so what is the thalamus for? Okay, in a nutshell, it's a relay center. Alright, always have that keyword in your mind. It's a relay center. So basically, it's transferring information from the forebrain, okay, to the other three lobes, and vice versa. Right? It's also all this signaling occurs bidirectionally. Alright, remember that. Highly involved in learning and memory. When we talk about memory later, right, we will talk about the thalamus again. Okay. But the learning and memory that happens that the thalamus is involving usually is kind of procedural in nature. So it's subconscious. When you talk about procedural memory, attention, consciousness, again, everything is part of the frontal lobe's function. Hypothalamus, hypothalamus is very, very important for controlling our endocrinological functions. So it's involved in regulation of internal physiological state. Okay, that's what we call homeostasis, circadian rhythm, thermoregulation, reproduction, as what I mentioned. Okay, ingestive behavior, and then it controls endocrine system, release of hormones from pituitary gland. I mean, it coordinates the coordinates of release of hormones from that. That is actually a very complicated gland. Okay, there's a lot of papers, thousands of papers written about that gland. So yeah. For those of you who are kind of interested in investigating such endocrine system, okay, that's a good topic to write about. Okay, okay. So the last thing will be control of the autonomic nervous system. Okay, yeah. So for for flight, fight or flight responses, yeah. So that's highly involved. Hypothalamus is highly involved. Yeah. Okay. All right. So yeah. So this is thalamus, hypothalamus of the Diencephalon, right? So this image here, the coronal section here, is just showing you a bigger picture, right? A more colorful picture of the locations of these two regions. And hippo itself, right? Hippo means it's always kind of inferior to something. So yeah, that's a very easy way of remembering things. Okay, so hypothalamus is always inferior to the thalamus. Okay, take note. And what's the other thing I want to take note? Oh yeah, the lateral ventricle. Okay, lateral ventricle is anterior to the thalamus. Okay, usually when you do a cross section, right in the middle of the brain, okay, you will see the lateral ventricle, and this lateral ventricle differs in size. Okay, depends on whether you have a fatty diet, okay, or whether you stick to a lean diet. If you stick to a lean diet, your lateral ventricles will usually be a bit bigger. It doesn't mean that you have less cells. Okay. It just means that you don't really have so much fatty tissue. I learned that while doing all this imaging research myself. Yeah. So, yeah. Okay. So that's a very good thing to take note of. Okay. And Telencephalon, right? So lying above, covering. Okay. In fact, it's just covering our Diencephalon, right? All these are Latinized English words. Okay. As I say so. I do not think, okay, I will, maybe there is a few questions. I can't really remember, but just do take note of this words. I mean, it's good to know, right? Okay. So mesencephalon, right? That's the midbrain region. And then our hindbrain, okay, we have a lot of nuclei, okay, a lot of nuclei in that region, okay. Metencephalon, mesencephalon, okay, that involves our cerebellum, okay, our bridge, even our this vagus nerve that connects all the way to our spine. There's a lot of information there, okay. There's just no time to cover everything, because I just don't really want to overload everybody with all these terminologies. I think it's just very difficult, okay. And then you're not really tested on everything, so I think that's not fair, okay. So basal ganglia, okay, just want to talk about all these three regions of the telencephalon. So basal ganglia, number one, limbic system, okay, and cerebral cortex. I mean, that we talk about the cerebral cortex just now, right? So basically just the first two, right? Basal ganglia is kind of easy to get mixed up, okay? Even for me, even up to now, okay, so many years has passed by, I get mixed up, okay? Basal ganglia is, but do remember, right, it's involved in Parkinson's and Huntington's disease, right? Usually some kind of cell death, right? Lead to this kind of diseases where you kind of, and you basically have uncontrollable tick-like movements, okay? Parkinson, I'm sure everybody knows. Okay, last time there's this very famous American actor, Michael J. Fox. If you watch like Back to the Future, right? So I mean, he made those movies when he was young. I think in his 30s, somehow he got Parkinson's disease, and he turned to doing charitable work, highlighting getting Parkinson's disease, right, for people like him. So yeah, that was a great achievement. Yeah, Huntington's disease is very similar. Okay. But behaviorally it's very similar, right? You can't really control your limbic movements, but the area of lesion, okay, the area of damage is different. Okay, Parkinson's usually we refer to as substantia nigra, and Huntington's disease we talk about the basal ganglia proper. Okay, that one I will show you the specific structures involved. So limbic system, don't get confused. Our basal ganglia, don't get confused with our limbic system, okay? I mean, they overlap, okay, but they're not totally the same, right? Okay, so the next slide, okay, the slide on basal ganglia, right? I want everybody to just take note of the overall shape of it, okay? It's like a French horn. Yeah, that's how I kind of memorize this thing, okay? But then again, you still have to know, right? If it's a French horn, what is the most prominent part, right? It's this, this curve here, right? So that's the main body of the caudate, right? Okay, that's not the caudate nucleus per se, but it's just the main structure. The nucleus itself is found within the body, right? Within the arc, okay? And globus pallidus is, of course, kind of hidden, right? It's almost like a scallop shape, scallop shape structure. And then thalamus, of course, is kind of embedded, right? Under the not really embedded, but it's just lying inferior, okay? Inferior to the globus pallidus. Yeah, that's basically how you kind of spatially coordinate all these structures. And then so when you actually look at this thing, so if it's a French horn, right? So at the tip of the arc, we have the amygdala, right? So yeah, and the amygdala is right proximal to the hippocampus. Okay, later on in the next few slides we'll see. Okay, subthalamic nucleus in this region, it's kind of hard to see, right? But I mean, it's part of the thalamus. I would say thalamus has a lot of nucleus. Just to let everybody knows, right? And it's a nucleus that's kind of hidden underneath the thalamus, right? But very, very important. Why do we actually care? And the nucleus accumbens, again, it's somewhere posterior. It's very, very small, right? It's very, very close to the amygdala. Okay, I just want to say that. So why do we actually care about these kinds of nucleus, subthalamic, nucleus accumbens? Because believe it or not, even though they're so small, such nucleus, they're highly involved in economic decision making. Okay. So that's why I mentioned yesterday. So if you like gambling, okay, you want to do soccer gambling, for instance, okay, you want to bet on a certain team, right? So such nucleus are usually involved if you want to engage in some risk-taking behavior, okay? And then also like something that's, you're motivated by financial reward, essentially, right? So all this nucleus, okay, are sending out signals, are highly activated. And we have a large body of work in neuroscience, in human neuroscience, that shows the high involvement of the nucleus accumbens, right, in economic decision making. Any kind of decision making involves risk, involving reward, usually activates nucleus accumbens. Okay, then basal ganglia borders the lateral ventricles. Okay, so this is what I mentioned earlier: degeneration of basal ganglia identified by enlarged ventricles, Huntington's disease. It's kind of hard, right? Basically, you really need, if you have such disease, you really need to go and get a scan, okay, get a brain scan, MRI scan. Then the neurosurgeon can tell you specifically which part of your basal ganglia is actually suffering from degeneration. Okay, usually it's kind of hard to speculate, right, from this. It can really happen anywhere. Okay, usually it's the globus pallidus. Okay, I would say it's basically the globus pallidus and the caudate nucleus putamen. Okay, and also I just want to touch on this caudate nucleus putamen together, right? Is considered as what we call the striatum. Okay, STRIATUM. Okay, and that is highly involved in procedural memory formation. Okay, and the last bullet point, I wouldn't really talk too much on it. Hydrocephalus. Okay, so pressure on basal ganglia from CSF. Okay, can form hydrocephalus. Okay, it's kind of water swelling. Okay, in plain English terms, right? From all this excessive CSF, and that really impinges on your basal ganglia, right? It affects the function overall, and that will affect you from having a normal gait. So when you're walking, gait-based gaits, you have to maintain a certain posture. Okay, you cannot maintain a posture, unfortunately. So how I see this thing is that it's really affecting the nervous transmission. Okay, the signaling with the hindbrain. Okay, like cerebellum, medulla, for instance. Yeah. Okay, so limbic system. All right, so let's look at this limbic system. Okay, so one thing in common that it has with the basal ganglia, that the limbic system does involve the hippo. Let me just check again. Right. Okay, it doesn't really involve the thalamus. All right, but it does involve the hypothalamus. Okay, so yeah, which is somehow it's not so much emphasized, right? So and it's a bit unfortunate, right? But what people actually care about whenever they talk about limbic system, right, the ones that I highlighted, okay. So number one that comes to mind, starting with an A, right, is amygdala, then our hippocampus, okay, and the surrounding region. So the hippocampus and the parahippocampal gyrus, or together, right? I mean, and the mammillary bodies. I mean, we do have a lot of nuclei again, okay. Together we call them the hippocampal formation, right? Take note, And then posterior cingulate, strictly speaking, I wouldn't really consider it as part of the limbic system. But anyway, I mean, okay, just loosely speaking, right? They still involve the cingulate, okay? They still involve the anterior cingulate and posterior cingulate. Okay, usually I see it as separate, but it doesn't really matter, okay? And then septal area, again, that's a very big nucleus involving learning, involving emotion regulation. Phonics as well, okay? Phonics is primarily involved in connecting our hippocampus, right, to the surrounding regions of the medial temporal lobe, right? So usually it's just this bundle of nerve fibers, right? So if you severe it, okay, your hippocampus can still function as per normal. Everything is fine, right? It's just that your hippocampus, will not be able to receive signals from like your neocortex, for instance. It's still able to send out signals, okay, but it's not able to receive signals. And as a matter of fact, so you are learning of new materials, okay. Let's say I'm telling you all these facts, right? You wouldn't be able to remember. So you would have anterograde amnesia, okay. So whatever's new to you, you cannot encode. But whatever's in the past, right, before the separation, you can still remember, okay. So that's a very interesting part of the phonics, okay. Okay, so altogether, I just want to highlight what I mentioned, like hippocampus, parahippocampal gyrus, phonics, amygdala, emotions, septal area, that's what I mentioned. Olfactory bulb, smell, okay, sensation, okay. Also involving emotions, okay, yeah. So yeah, it's not what it's being named exactly for, okay, so that's the beauty of our brain, okay. Cingulate cortex, okay, I just want to give a quick update, right. ACC, actually this region actually I'm very fascinated with. Okay, I actually wrote a lot of paper on ACC. So it's involving attention. Okay, for my case now, it's more about attention, less about decision making. Right, so decision making when the ACC is activated is that when there's some kind of conflict, right, you want to resolve, right, there's some kind of dilemma, right, then ACC is highly involved. Okay, in an experimental context, okay, that's how we do things. Okay. Anticipation reward, okay, not too surprising because it has a lot of bidirectional connection with nucleus accumbens, so not too surprising. Posterior cingulate, because of its bidirectional connections with our inferior parietal lobe, right, and our occipital lobe, okay, So that really allows it to carry out, eye movements. Yeah, eye movements. I mean, theoretically speaking, is not really what our occipital lobe should be involving. Okay, it has to involve other areas. Okay, spatial orientation especially. Okay, so telling yourself which direction is north. I mean, a lot of people can't do this actually. Okay, so but yeah, with our phone, okay, we can do this thing. Okay, we can spatially orient ourselves. Okay, telling us where it's north. Okay, memory. Yeah, lots of memory, but primarily I would say it's visual spatial memory. Yeah, visual spatial memory. Okay. So hippocampus, as I said, okay, very quickly, this slide here, it just shows you the image of the schematic image of it. So it's in Greek, it just means seahorse. Okay, it means seahorse. And once it's damaged, okay, so here is the anteromedial amnesia, what I mentioned just now. So you have difficulty forming new, okay, episodic declarative memories, okay, about yourself, about other people. But at the same time, depending on the severity, you can also have retrograde amnesia, right? So things that happen to you, right, many years ago, right, you can also, forget them, okay? So when we come to the learning and memory lectures, okay, when you talk about HM, you will see that he has both, okay? Very severe. So amygdala, okay, all right, amygdala is anterior to the hippocampus. Previously, it was stated as posterior. Okay, I didn't make that mistake. Okay, I corrected it. Anterior to the hippocampus. Okay, right, because it's in our frontal lobe. Okay, right, yeah, and you can see from here, right, our this hippocampus is just posterior to it. So emotion processing. So all this, the second bullet point, right? I mean, how is it found to be important? So it's mainly based on fMRI work. Okay, I would say primarily the bulk of it, more than 90%. And basically, how they found out is that when they show, the participants different kinds of emotional images, right, that elicit fear, elicit different kinds of negative emotions. Not just images, okay, also like videos. And then at a certain point, certain video, they're really surprised by some really ghastly images. Yeah, so that's how they do. Electrical stimulation again, mostly on animals. Okay, humans, they do this as well. But usually, it's on patients, right? People with some kind of epilepsy. It's not really normal people, okay? Even though there has been research on normal people, what I've seen previously in America, but I mean, yeah, you still have to give a lot of consent for that kind of invasive research. Yeah. So basically, some kind of electrode has to be stick inside your brain, So yeah, you can imagine, okay? And then it gets stimulated, amygdala gets stimulated. And then after that, you will get to experience intense fear, some negative emotion, aggression, without even doing such behavior. So that's amazing stuff. So damage, so damage can actually be a good thing. You will not really have all that fear, have that aggressive behavior. Okay, surprisingly, all right. And abnormalities, so includes irrational violence. All right. So all these things, okay. You can see, all right. Charles Whitman, I mean, killed his family members, yeah. So all happened in the States, okay, once upon a time, okay. Right, so these are very unfortunate, right? These are all shooting instances, campus shooting instances, which I didn't really know about this before I read this textbook, right? And it has been found that these people have tumors, okay, in the amygdala. So that really affected its structural integrity, right? Functions. Yeah. All right, so this part, I just want people to understand, all right, anatomical directions apply both to the brain, okay, and to our body, right? This is so that you don't get mixed up, all right, in the future when people talk to you about such things, okay? Very important. So as what I've been saying, everybody know what is anterior, okay, what is posterior, okay, but do take note that anterior is also called rostral, posterior is also called caudal. And usually we use such terms, okay, to refer to specific subcortical regions like hippocampus. For reasons unknown, actually I don't know. Maybe it's just some people actually like it. They like to use rostral, because I think rostral is a slightly more fine-grained version of anterior, right? Sometimes, because when they talk about even like anterior hippocampus, right? Anterior hippocampus itself can be subdivided into rostral and caudal region. So they don't really want to repeat themselves. Use anterior and posterior again. So that's something to take note of. And we have the lateral region, the side regions, okay, take note of that. So when we go to the middle part of the side region, if we talk about lateral cortex, the middle portion is what I'm pointing here, okay, far away from the corpus callosum, that is what we call the middle gyrus, right? On the middle sulcus, right, if there's a we have a juncture, right? So that would be the sulcus. So the medial part, right, is like, the part of our brain, okay, is usually a kind of measurement, okay, very, very close to our corpus callosum, right, our interhemispheric fissure, okay, the space. So usually it kind of covers all the white matter here, all the white matter, right? That's beneath our neocortex in the gray area, and then it stretches all the way to the interhemispheric space, right? So that's the medial part of the brain. You have to cut it, right? You have to cut out the lateral surfaces, right? So the view from the top is called axial, okay? Axial, remember that? Axial is much more used than transverse, okay? Transverse is fine, okay, but axial is much more used, right? And then this is a sagittal view, okay? Sagittal view from the side, okay, of the lateral surfaces. So in this slide here, okay, we have a very good view of the cerebellum, okay, and then our middle temporal lobe, okay, not the medial, but the middle, okay. So we're looking at the cortical surface. Very, very clear view. And then there's also something here, all right. That's a space containing our eyeballs, okay. We're gonna go into that, right? So we need to have some space for that, right? Anterior region, posterior region. Okay, superior is also called dorsal. Depending on the structure we're referring to. Okay, it refers very, very well to the parahippocampal gyrus, for instance. Okay, usually we call it, anything that's upper, it's called the dorsal. And inferior, it's also called the ventral region, right? Okay, ventral. We like to call our certain parts of our PFC, right? Like we have this thing what we call the ventral medial. So ventral is usually what we use together with the word medial, not ventral lateral. Okay. Yeah, I mean it's just people like scientists. They have their preferences. Okay. Then dorsal is like they like to use it with the word lateral. So dorsal lateral. Yeah. And not superior lateral, yeah. It's almost not heard of, yeah. Okay, again, right, so coronal section, right, we've seen this before, right? So a cut, right, to the brain, right, this is like the middle part of the brain, and then perpendicular to the floor, okay? Don't get this thing wrong, if you are being asked about this in your exam, don't get this thing wrong, okay? A coronal section, right? And then basically, that's the only way that we get a good so-called cross-sectional view, okay, of our ventricles, okay? Right, so again, I mean, we're seeing this, okay? Superior portion, inferior portion, lateral portion, yeah. Okay, so let's have our first quiz, right, for our tutorial. All right, so this is from yesterday, right? I want everybody to give me your answer. So which of the ANS, autonomic nervous systems, okay, yeah, I mean, we do have a few systems, right, subsystems involved preparing your body for fight or flight response, okay? Shout out the answer. Okay, I think it's in the slide itself, right? Okay, okay. And then consider the second one. Okay, yeah. So the first answer is? Yes, correct. Yeah, sympathetic, right? So the second one will have to be, if the first is sympathetic, the second one will be? Yeah, okay. Okay, you got it wrong. Got it right, okay? So this is the second time I'm showing this, which means it's super important, okay? Don't get this thing wrong, right? Yeah. Okay, so what are the 3 layers? Okay, this is really for the benefit of your general knowledge. I'm not going to test this because this is super structural. It doesn't tell you how something works. Yeah, I don't really see the point. But it's very useful to know, right? That we do have 3 layers, covering our brain, right? So dura mater, again, I mean, this is Latinized English, the hard surface, the hard skull bone covering our head. So for those of you who are interested, so which part of our, skull, I would say, right, is the hardest? Anybody know? Right, so going from our forehead all the way to the back, okay, which part do you think, right? Yeah, where's which region is the dura mater the thickest? Yeah, in other words. Yeah, the front, yeah. So the front, exactly, right? So the front part, yeah, I mean, because I think that's just a very terrific design, how we are designed. So because that really will protect our forebrain. Because I think the forebrain is pretty much the most important lobe in our brain. Other regions, if you do some separation, okay, let's say parietal lobe or temporal lobe, okay, maybe not the cerebellum, okay, maybe not the cerebellum, okay, but the other lobes, your cortical lobes, you can still adapt, right? You can still adapt. Your brain can still adapt and change and grow new neurons. But once, if your prefrontal lobe is superly lesioned, it's going to really affect your social behavioral well-being. Okay, it's going to affect so many things. So we're just biologically designed, to have a huge, a thick layer of covering over our forehead, yeah, over the frontal lobe, yeah. Okay, so what is in between the second arachnoid and third pia? Pia means soft, the soft layer. Okay, that is on the panel. Okay, which is here, right? That is a subarachnoid space, right? I mean, it's not an empty space, right? It has a lot of CSF, cerebral spinal fluid. Okay, remember that. So the question number 3 is highly interesting. I didn't know about this. Okay, I only happened to know about this thing after reading the new textbook. Right, so it's very useful. So meninges can be found in the peripheral inners. Okay, so there's no CSF, right? It's just a hard and soft layer. Okay, yeah. Again, I mean, I think that really speeds up because it doesn't really require a cushioning. You know, there's no soft, because when you're looking at our spinal cord, right? You know, the bones that forms the spinal cord. There really isn't anything that's particularly soft, you know, like our brain, you know, for instance, you know, that we actually need to have an extra layer of fluid. Yeah. So again, this is a special feature of our nervous system. Okay, take note of that. Yeah. Okay, so this is a quiz again, right? The second or the third quick quiz, right? 4 lobes. I want everybody to give me the answer, right? So the first lobe is, all right, cool. All right, second one is parietal. Okay. Then the third one is occipital, right? Then the fourth is temporal. Okay, cool, right? Everybody got this, okay? Yeah. Okay, so the next part, okay,